Good afternoon, wonderful people. I've come to start reading my books online because you know how audiobooks can be so handy when you're out for a walk or you're cooking in the kitchen or you're cleaning the house or whatever you're doing and you're kind of busy doing something else and you'd love to be listening to something interesting. Well, I thought that my books would be far more reachable and far more accessible to people if I actually read them online. So here it goes. I better get started. My name's Genevieve Smith. I'm from Ireland originally. I do have British ancestry as well, coming down through my mother's line, being half an English woman. There's no denial there. And well, I've got quite a bit of background myself. Being brought up in Ireland, having premonitions, arriving in Catalonia in Spain, living out here now for the past 20 years. Half of my life has been in Ireland and here. And well, I'm a primary school teacher originally, and I still do teach English out here to a whole load of children, to about 250 students a week. And on top of that, I have my children, one in heaven and one on earth. And I have my dog, who is a Weimaraner. She's particularly boisterous, but you love her loads, don't you? I've got my garden, my home, and I trained in music therapy, yoga teaching, transformational coaching, meditation certificate. I also have, and well, I went down the road of energy healing as I had that done to myself, and I loved it. And I saw the real powerful changes that it can do on oneself. So, if you're interested in contacting me on any energy healing, such as the energetic protocol removal and emotional blockages removal that I do, it works wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I can access your unconscious with your permission only, and work on you and your and remove all that is traumatic or impeding you from living your best life. A whole load of stuff comes up, and it's usually transgenerational. Now, this is also constellation work. So if we need to specifically work on a particular issue that you have in your life, okay, I do suggest doing an online constellation therapy with me, and that's about a 40-minute session or so. And we look at everything from resolving relationships with your mom, your dad, relationships in general with others, your abundancy, your health, your work life, whatever's happening within you, the emotion of anger within you, the emotion of loss, the emotion of pain, resolving the dead, because they're all around us, and unless a lot of healing work is done there, they can't pass to the light. So that's what I've seen through the course of my experience of working in this field, and I shall continue to do so, as I really do feel that this is the area that I have a great passion for, and I'm quite natural at it, and I love it. So I can't wait to get my full-blown certificate, although I have one already. I'm waiting for the next one, and yeah, really looking forward to healing anyone online, as well as I have been doing over the past year now, although I've been healing people for the last 6 years energetically, wherever and whatever. I've worked very hard in it. I've healed an awful lot of areas, and I shall continue to do so. So this is my Sunday at the moment, and before I go baking a carrot cake later, I'm just going to start reading from my first book. It's a novel that I wrote when I was pregnant, because then I really did feel the urge that I needed to write and express myself in English, being a foreigner out here in the middle of nowhere by the woods on my own. And the husband was off working, and a Catalan man, not really getting everything, although he wasn't bad at English, I must say. So, the story originated with the idea of bringing myself back, I suppose, to my origins of where I'm from, Ireland, and the land of fairies, and what's a fairy, who are they, why they're so important, and I really kind of wanted to make my own fairy story here, and my own leprechaun story, because I'd heard a lot about the usual stories about Patrick and the leprechaun, or the fairy rings and the signs and what they do, and so on and so forth. And I decided, well, I want to write my own fairy story here with its own twist, and I don't want things to be predictable. Like I like in a lot of my books, I like that there are lessons learned and that it's not just a regular read that people are going to get bored with. Rather, that it's quite a short, fast novel with description, because I love description as well in nature, but light, not dense, and getting on to action and interesting dialogue and fantastical things happening and strange or unusual conclusions. However, everything has to make sense and be coherent as well. So my book here, my debut would be this one, Fairies Should They Don't Exist. It would be running into its nearly 10th year in existence. All these books are for sale on Amazon. So the writing in parts is massive, but no, in general, the writing is pretty good. It's just that the introduction, it came out like that for me for some reason on the Amazon Direct Publishing. So the Irish fairies, long ago in the time when books were still not yet invented, most people believed in the fairies. The fairies are people too, but they are very little and magical. They are dressed in an old-fashioned style, the females with long light dresses and usually possessing transparent wings, while the males wear fishtail coats and old cobbler's shoes with a big brass buckle and of course a tall rugged hat on their head as if they were really gentlemen, which indeed they considered themselves to be. They are commonly known as leprechauns. Now the fairies are a polite and civilized folk when they are happy, which is in general. However, they do not like being upset. They live in the woods, and usually a ring of mushrooms marks their home. If this is trodden on or destroyed, that is their fairy fort, then the fairies will seek revenge. They like to put thorns in your bed. They believe in doing good, and if bad is done, then it is punished by bad only. So you see, the story is very karmic, and I love karma, and divine justice for me is it's why I'm alive. They believe themselves to be a fair people. However, there is one type of fairy, the leprechaun, who are very rich, and they make fine shoes and have pots of gold lying at the end of rainbows. However, the leprechaun is known to be a more mischievous, deceiving creature who doesn't like interference of any sort. There is one particular leprechaun that exists who doesn't take things lightly. Now, if caught, told, or even written about, whereby its secrets are revealed, then this could infuriate the leprechaun to the point of death. But as they are ultimately workers for Mother Nature, revenge will be achieved in the most naturally beneficial way possible. The fairies, after all, are guardians of the divine realm. Good start, right? Let's keep reading. It's just some introduction there, but I realize now I actually have a prologue coming on. So, there she was, slunken over her desk like a rag doll who'd been flung down upon a chair. Her limbs dangled and her lips were pursed and pale. She was a nice person. She'd given a lot of her time and energy to others. She'd been teaching for over a decade now, although recently she had started at a new school. She was always a challenge seeker. The bell rings. It is break time. The pupils are outside in the playground. Their yells could be heard penetrating the classroom's window panes, but she doesn't budge. In fact, she couldn't. It just happened like that. Life had left her for dead. No breathing, no twitching, just solid and light. Just dead. Oh gosh, this doesn't sound good, does it? Now, how long is chapter 1 to see if I have time to read that? Right, we're going to do these videos in like 10 minutes or so, we don't want to take too much out of ourselves. Chapter 1. It is 15 minutes after break. Silence reinstills upon the corridors as pupils muffle about in their rooms like busy bees. Where's the English teacher? She must be delayed, thought Mrs. Brady for a moment, nervously glaring at the classroom clock that now struck 11:05. Not waiting a minute more, she storms off to Jane's classroom to see what was up. Jane, the new English teacher, is a tall, dark blonde and blue-eyed woman in her 30s. Her fine features, which make her attractive to look at. She is now actually leaning down over her desk, turned in front of Mrs. Brady's glaring eyes. What is she doing? Sleeping? Wait, Maybe she has fainted. Mrs. Brady begins to ponder more and more frantically as she peeps through the classroom door's glass panel. She decides to enter. She tries the door, but it is locked. This isn't unusual, as teachers have been told to lock doors at all times, seeing that there has been many cases of vandalism. After all, this school is located in the heart of a ghetto whereby the socio-economic level is particularly low. Mrs. Brady rushes back to her class, grabs the keys, while warning the children to continue on their work in silence, and dashes back out. Jane is still in the same position, her plait trailing down her back, her ankles crisscross. Mrs. Brady shakes her shoulders, shouts into her ears, checks her pulse, and lo and behold, she seems somewhat dead. Dead! There isn't any pulse. Her first reaction was to lie her down and give her the kiss of life. Barely remembering the first aid course's instructions, she doesn't succeed and opts to run downstairs immediately and seek help. Management rings for the ambulance straight away. Mrs. Brady could only stare at the secretary and headmistress, who were busy, distressingly checking the lifeless body. It could have been any of us, she blurted out. It could have happened to any of us, you know, she self-corrected the panic-stricken Mrs. Brady. Meanwhile, Jane's body is lifted off by the two ambulance nurses. Mrs. Brady finds it hard to settle her nerves, yet heads back to class. She sips a huge gulp of water from her glass, then that she always kept on her desk, shakes her body and rubs her eyes, trying to muster up a smile. She tells the children that the usual fib, that something came up, so Mrs. Jane had to leave school. But none of the children were told that she was dead, obviously, at that point. Well, back to work then, everyone. Aren't you finished yet? And she squeaked out and adds suddenly, and there won't be any English literature class today as Miss Jane had to leave the premises. It was as if a wave of fear had washed over her whole being. She's in shock, and flashes of Jane's dead body over her desk haunt her mind incessantly. She couldn't continue to teach. She needed time to reflect on what had happened and what could happen next. Right, everybody, draw a picture and colour it in. She gasped for air, made the sign of the cross over her body, and continued to stare out the window at the foreboding, overcast sky. I'm loving this story. Chapter 2 is pretty short. We'll read on there just for a bit. We'll make it 15 minutes. Early the next morning, the police arrived and declared that they would have to carry out a thorough investigation at the school. Apparently, the post-mortem indicated some surprising facts. Firstly, it seemed like Jane died of natural causes, possibly by a stroke or heart failure, although both of these didn't seem so likely either, basically because of what the pathologist next found out. Well, what was most striking was the fact that Jane had no blood left in her body. No blood at all, for that matter. There wasn't any found in the classroom either. No wounds marked her body, but whatever had happened, her blood was entirely gone, therefore causing her death. This left the police and the head detective, Mr. Mullins, to conclude that this was murder and he needed to find all possible clues. First, they would search Jane's room and home. Next step was to interview as many people possible that knew her, and hopefully with the clues provided the missing pieces of this puzzle, and they would finally all come together. Now, most importantly, the first part of the investigation was well underway. The police had clearly listed their questions. Was there such a skilled killer? Is it a high possibility? Why? What did Jane do to deserve this? Or was it a grave medical condition? Maybe. Was it paranormally related? Was Jane attacked by a vampire? Or worse, could she have been bewitched? Really, there are no such things. Are there? Magic? So that doesn't exist, does it? Chapter 3. Hang on, there's just one page. We'll get it in. Feeling all alone, Jane decides to indulge in a packet of chocolate digestives. Sometimes comfort food is just needed. Over the past few months, she had been suffering from society's pressures. Am I better off single or with someone? I'm getting old. Should I have a child? Why do my friends seem to use me? Why doesn't my family support my actions abroad? Why have I spent my entire life pleasing others? Why can't I please myself for a change? Teaching is just draining. Surely there are other jobs less demanding and giving so much of one's time and energy. Bills, bills, and more bills. Dieting is only making me miserable. And her mind roved on, pinpointing all her worries. She always reached the same conclusion, that it would help if she wasn't alone. But I'm exhausted, going out every day Don't I need some me time? She admitted to herself, yet her mind continued its inner struggle for happiness. I can't cope with me time. That's my issue. These thoughts just reiterate every day in her head. I just need to focus on nothing. Jane was torn between many things, but at the end of the day she enjoyed living and maybe too much the company of others. Indeed, so much so that no one could ever get too close for fear of sharing her deepest secrets. We shall have a little break there now, and then we'll continue on reading chapter 4 to, well, how many chapters are in the book? 10 epilogue. We'll do another 2 videos.